Hello and welcome to The Insider, a show designed to clue you into the biggest news, events and announcements inside the video games industry, discussing with you some things you may know, some things you may not, and glue hold it all together is a little bit of my own opinion. My name is Paul James, thank you very much for watching, and let's get for the episode. We're back to my pet subject of PlayStation this week. We're discussing the State of Play, a recent show that was debuted by PlayStation, a live Nintendo Direct style experience that was streamed to the world that highlighted the future of the PlayStation platform. In this week's episode of The Insider, we're going to discuss what all of those things were that were announced, what they mean, and how PlayStation can improve this experience going forward.
Hostiles inbound, 10 o'clock.
So much for a hero's welcome.
So before we dive into some criticisms of the State of Play, and I don't have many of them to be honest, let's focus on the show itself. They put on a really good first debut episode. There were some awesome games from the AAA space to mid-tiers to the VR titles, and it was a very VR-centric show, and we'll talk about some of those games in a moment and some particular highlights there, but they gave us a bit of everything. It was a nice, short, sharp, concise show, one that allowed me to squeeze it in before I started work. Thank you, PlayStation. Your gems. And they gave us some really cool insight into some upcoming titles. In the AAA space, we saw Days Gone, and that's doing some really cool things, and I feel like that game is getting better and better every time I see it. I spent 2 hours in a line waiting to play that game at PAX, loved it there, and what I'm seeing more and more of now is the story side of things. That's really promising and really suggesting that it's going to be a really powerful narrative, and I can't wait to play that at the end of April. But then on the flip side, you've got some mid-tier titles. We saw Concrete Genie, which is looking really, really good. That's coming from Pixel Opus. We've seen some footage of that already. We've seen some trailers. We've seen some gameplay. But we got more of that, and the game's looking really promising, and it's coming out in spring this year. We saw Ready Set Heroes, which is a new title. It's a dungeon crawler, competitive co-op thing, looking to do some really cool and interesting stuff. I'm keen to see more of it. And then in the VR space, there was a lot of titles, but there were some particular highlights. Iron Man VR and Marvel's Iron Man VR, which is officially revealed and exclusive to the PSVR, at least in the short term. And then there was updates to a whole bunch of games, the particular highlight being Falcon Age in particular, let's be honest. There were some other really cool titles there, but Falcon Age is one to watch. It's out in like 2 weeks. There were some awesome things they showed in this presentation, and again, they kept it really concise. It was short, it was sharp, it was to the point. It really followed that Nintendo Direct model, and it worked a treat in a lot of ways. But there are some things that can be improved about it, and we're going to talk about those beginning next.
Oh, for God's sake, what did I tell you?
So despite the fact that it was a pretty good presentation overall with some really cool games shown, transparency would have made a big difference to the perception of this show before it debuted, and would have helped influence and kind of impact people's opinion, their reception after it aired. What I mean by that is, and I think about Nintendo Directs, Nintendo will come out before a Nintendo Direct and will say, we're going to be showing off a bunch of 3DS games or a bunch of Switch games with the center attraction being Game X. Most recently for them, it was Fire Emblem. PlayStation, on the other hand, they just said, we're having State of Play. And it basically meant that people's minds and imaginations ran wild. In the absence of an E3 conference this year, supposedly, and I am inclined to believe them on that, people are wondering, where's The Last of Us going to show up? Where's Ghost of Tsushima going to show up? Where's Death Stranding? When are we going to see some hints PS5? When are we going to see more Horizon, Spider-Man, God of War, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on and on. So when you announce something like this, and then don't give people anything to kind of help set their expectations, people's imaginations run wild. They go in there expecting the world, and then it's ultimately not delivered. It's not realistic. There's logical reasons to why these things happen. And I think opening up with a VR-centric show like they did for this first State of Play was a brilliant idea. As someone who's got a VR and has kind of used it less and less really over the last few months, I'm looking for an excuse to get into it, and they've given me a whole bunch of those. They've given me dates and timelines that I can actually work to, and then things like Iron Man that I can look forward to. It was a great show, but the thing is, people went into it thinking, am I going to see The Last of Us? Am I going to see this? Am I going to see this new title? What's going to happen? Am I going to get, what are we going to get? If they went out in there and said, it's going to be State of Play, episode 1 is a very VR-centric episode, then that dulls the expectations straight away, and you don't get the like to dislike ratio that you saw off the back of this first episode.
You can bring your friends.
One of the things that I must say I was disappointed with when it came to the State of Play show was the lack of personality present. We got some undefined, unnamed personality that sat there behind a microphone and provided some sort of dialogue there that kind of linked announcement to announcement to announcement, and that was fine, but it was super basic. One of the things that Nintendo does the best in their presentations, and to be honest, sometimes they go too far, leaning far too into the quirky and weird, and it kind of comes off as very awkward. But they make their personalities, the developers, the PR people, Reggie, whoever it happens to be, hopefully Doug Bowser, because I want to see more Bowser-related jokes in my Nintendo Directs going forward. They really lean into the personalities that they have, and they add that little bit of flavour to a game that's probably already awesome. But they mix these two things together and make a really good show as a result. The thing that I was concerned about with PlayStation is there wasn't anyone for me to latch onto. Give me a big PlayStation executive. Get Sean Layden out there, for example. Maybe that's a bit much. Find someone else that's within that sort of sphere that can get out there, that's very good publicly, can speak to the consumer, that can win over hearts and minds and imaginations. They've got a personality. Get a developer out there. Hell, get Cory Barlog. I know it seems a little bit ridiculous because he's a developer that's focused specifically on one game, but he's a big personality within the PlayStation ecosphere. So get him out there and do it. And then maybe next time around you get Neil Druckmann. Maybe next time you get someone else from one of your other studios. I think that's a great premise and one that would make a huge amount of difference. They can throw in some little nuggets to whatever their current project is. You're getting more exposure for big names at their big AAA studios. Seems like a win-win. As we wrap things up, I can't help but also take a look at Xbox's ID at Xbox Game Pass show that actually debuted less than 24 hours later. They really implemented a Nintendo Direct model that was far closer to that Nintendo Direct model. They did some of the things that I spoke about just in this past episode. They had some personalities get involved. They were very transparent as to what it is. ID at Xbox is the independent games kind of program that Xbox has up and running. So people knew exactly what they were going to get. The Game Pass thing was in there, so we knew that there was games coming across to Game Pass. We knew they weren't going to be any massive blockbusters. We weren't going to see Gears of War 5 or Halo Infinite or any of those sort of things. They made it super transparent. It still fit in that same model, but everyone's expectations were checked before they went in and watched it. And as a result, look, I didn't think they showed anything particularly amazing. There were some really cool quality titles in there, but there was nothing that kind of knocked my socks off. But I knew what to expect going into it, so I didn't expect the world and then come away shitty like you clearly saw with the PlayStation comments and the like to dislike ratio in the video there. It's a small thing, but Xbox really demonstrated how things can and should be, building on the Nintendo model. And neither company needs to just directly replicate what Nintendo does. Otherwise we get a very generic show that it doesn't really tell us much. And look, they don't need to replicate what Nintendo's doing anyway. There's a great model there, there's one that's proven to be successful, but it's not the be-all and end-all, and it doesn't have to be followed directly. PlayStation has fantastic studios, fantastic people, fantastic IP. Xbox, same sort of deal. Take advantage of those, put your own spin on it, and you've got a formula that really works. As long as you're transparent, you get those people in front of the camera, in front of all of us, so that we can learn more about them, they can inject their personality into the experience, we're going to be better off going forward.
We need you here, and that scares the hell out of you.
And that concludes this week's episode of The Insider. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. All those buttons down below here, and hit that notification bell. That way you're alerted to every new video the moment it goes live on the channel. That includes Patched, The Insider, Play 2 Plays, Late Game Review, Gamer School, and a whole bunch more. There's some awesome content there, so please be sure to go and check it out. Visit the website player2.net.au where you'll find reviews, previews, opinion pieces, news, features, the Player 2 Writers Draft, links to our podcast series Dev Diary, and the Player 2 podcast which now hosts the Player 2 Pixelcast, and a whole bunch more. There's some awesome stuff there. Please be sure to go and check those out. Catch us on Patreon, patreon.com/player2au, and kick in a few bucks. At the lower tiers you get early access to episodes of this, Patched, and a whole bunch more. At the higher tiers you get monthly episode exclusives, and the ability to join us in the Player 2 podcast. For rolling updates, you can find me at Paul James Games on Twitter, the website you'll find at Player2AU. And until next time, that has been the whole PlayStation State of Play, Xbox's ID at Xbox Game Pass showcases. We're in a world now where Borderlands 3 exists. Get hyped. I'll see you later.